Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Hey, Frank. Good to see you.
Same here, man. What's new?
Oh man, new week, fresh start. Looking forward. I mean, things are going along well. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's going really well, man.
Yeah?
Things are good.
Anything cool? Anything exciting going on in your life?
Yeah, well, everything's exciting.
Well, you got Dr. Joe coming up this week.
Yeah, I'm leaving Sunday.
Oh,
Yeah, can't wait.
that's gonna be great.
Yeah, can't wait, man.
I bet. You
Yes.
excited?
Oh, really excited.
Have you been reading about what they're going to be doing and all the different activities,
You know,
like meditations and whatnot?
no, it's funny because I looked at it. Karen's like, "So what's the itinerary?" I'm like, "I just know when it starts." So she goes, "I'm like, yeah, I don't think they have one." She goes, "Frank, they have one." I'm like,
They definitely have one.
I know where I have to show up, right? Yeah, I didn't really look deep into it, but I know I'm going to be doing a lot of meditating.
Yeah.
So I work best when I don't know too much.
Well, it's funny because a lot of us, when we hear the word meditation, we think that it's sitting down, eyes closed, silence.
No.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Well, that is one way.
Oh, of course, but like what you're talking about, there are eyes wide open walking meditations.
Actually, yeah, and I want to just talk about this. So, in the future, and getting away from like the new agey type thing, and it's not that it was wrong, but we're going to start looking at meditation as a new technology.
I like
It's
that.
transferring, because that's what it is. Is what is meditation? Multitudes like become familiar with, and what also.
Oh yeah, I just heard that new one. Without measurement.
Without measurement. So, and actually, we live in a physical world where when you go into the field and create the particle, if you will, you measure it to see where you want to go from there. But if you hold on to the measurement, this is where we go lost. So, by meditating or going into the field of technology of meditation, we're going to start changing it up here, make it a little more mainstream. All of a sudden, you're not holding on to the particle anymore. You're using that particle, but now I want to build on it. So I have to go back into the field, and that's what meditation allows me to do. And Einstein, one of his famous quotes is, "The field is a governed agent of the particle." So the agency that actually created the particle is the field. So going into the field in the state of meditation, whether it's sitting, laying, walking, standing, whatever it is, you actually can go in there and create new particles to keep building upon what we're doing here. So this is technology. This is not just to feel good. But when you actually feel good, you're creating a higher technology. Because humans, we are the technology. Yeah. One day we won't need your cell phone. You realize the cell phone is a replication of who we are. That's all it is. It's a fractal. So how did we create the cell phone? Because we're starting to understand the technology of what humans are, right? We have a part of the brain that actually stores information. The other one retrieves it. And then another one that goes into the cloud, goes into the World Wide Web, or goes on, the cloud, they call it the line, or the Akashic records, as some people mention it.
I just heard something the other day that I was watching where scientists have looked to find and identify where thoughts, where ideas are located in the brain. Because people, or I shouldn't say people, we as a society have thought that, okay, if this is coming from me and I can hear this voice, etc., and experience this, it must be inside of me and personal to me. And that couldn't be any more untrue. In fact, these ideas, these thoughts have been proven that we cannot pinpoint them in the brain. We cannot show where this is stored and where memories are stored because they're flashing all around the right side, left side of the brain, etc. And so scientists have come to realize we are much more of a receiver, like a transmitter, a receiver that tunes in, like Frank was just talking about, this cloud, this field.
Yeah.
And that's where our memories, our past experiences, our future, that's where it's all stored, the field. And we bring it into particle form through observation, through focus, through measurement, etc., like what Frank's referring to. And so this ties back and doubles back to what Frank and I go into when we talk about quantum physics. Quantum physics has proven through, I believe it's called the observation effect or the observer effect.
Yeah, the double slit experiment.
Yeah, the double slit experiment. We were able to prove that once we measure how...
And observe.
And observe how something...
Which is the measurement,
Yeah, which is the measurement, how something's done. That is what is making it into fact, solid, matter,
The particle. Yeah.
particle.
Yeah.
And I just think this is so eye-opening for people when they can see, oh my goodness, this is from a science level. I understand exactly what they're saying. It's when we observe something is when we define it. And so when we define something, we limit it. And that's why us as human beings on this planet, we are not particle. We are wave. We are also part of this consciousness. And so to look at it from an angle that I am Mike Kitlas. No, Mike Kitlas is a fictional character that has been created and I have attached to my entire life. And once I measure Mike Kitlas in these different ways, then I am defining him. The best way to kind of put it is, like, what I would tell someone is, when you measure, or what you can measure, you are not, is probably the best way that I would say it. Because
it's true, because you're not. But the thing is, the purpose of like living right now in the time we are is you want to keep expanding Mike Kitlas. So you don't scrap Mike Kitlas and throw him in the garbage, but your idea is to expand him in a preferential way. It's expanding either way. So,
and this is a new creation.
If you start doubting yourself and get down on yourself, you're going to expand yourself into disease. But if you keep looking at the character and the energy moving into it, because the expression of your life force is Mike Kitlas. That's just an expression. Just like an actor takes on a role, it's their expression of what they are. But it's not like, oh, well, if we're just acting, why do we bother acting? I'm like, yeah, because we came here to play with the physical world. So now we want to actually use this. And the reason I started using the word technology is because we seem to look at technology in a separate, more advanced way than looking at just maybe the word meditation alone. So again, it's just a word. I'm defining it. But when I say meditation is a new technology, it perks people up. But before, like you were mentioning the word God or stuff like that, or religion, people have an association to it.
And God is also technology.
But no one has a negative necessarily connotation to technology. There is technology that can ruin the earth, but then there's technology that can save the earth, so to speak, all right? And how we look at it. Again, those are perspectives. I'm not here to say one is better than the other.
How we observe
But the word technology becomes arbitrary. So meditation it's not the new technology. It's always been the technology. Because everything that was once imagined. How do you get into the field of imagination is through meditation. Like when I was a kid staring out the window and I noticed a bird on the tree when I was in school, and next thing you know, I didn't see the tree, I didn't see the bird, I got drifted off. And all of a sudden, I was woken by my teacher yelling at me.
Get this done.
And I didn't realize what I was doing. People like, you daydream. I'm like, yeah. But you look at all these people that created Marvel projects and Marvel technologies in the world that help people. They were themselves continuous and daydreamers, right? So, but like I couldn't be staring out the window all day long. I had to then bring it back into the solidified world and then create something out of it. So then I create, I'm like, okay, I like that. Now let's build upon it. Okay, Frank Daly. Oh, I like that aspect. Oh, we got to get rid of that one. Okay, go into the field, come back out and add to it. And it's constant expanding. But I'm not making myself better. I'm just expanding who I am. You don't make a canvas better by putting more paint on it.
That again, that's the mind measuring. As soon as we measure something, we say, "Is this good or bad?" We've taken the life from it.
Yeah,
it's now measured, and this is why people hate, going, to school or the standardized testing and all this, because we are not all the same walk of life. So to measure somebody on this and say, okay, you are not intelligent because you did not pass a standardized test, is so foolish on its face.
And with this new understanding, you'll still use a standardized testing, so to speak, to see if you're moving in the right directions, but you'll never you won't feel bad about getting like a B on it rather than A, because a B is like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. All right. I'm like, you're 80% or 80 something percent better or moving in the right direction. That's all you need to know. So you'll look at it and perceive it differently. So standardized testing and measurements will be looked at differently. It doesn't mean you don't do it, but I don't hold on to it. It isn't who I am. It's a moment in time. When I measure who I am, it's a moment in time, because the next moment I go to measure it again, I measure it again, I measure it again. And the measurement is just to see, am I moving in the right direction? This is how we build our kingdom. You start a kingdom by one hut, because I have to live in the hut until I build the castle. But then one day you just keep building it and have a kingdom. But it was the moment in which I started the kingdom is where it all started, and then just keep building it and building it. And this is what we came here to do. So Mike Kitlas is his kingdom, Frank Daly is my kingdom, and together we're partner kingdoms. And we build upon it. We're not fighting kingdoms.
But as soon as we again observe, and as soon as we measure, something happens, and it becomes solidified, and it becomes quote unquote real. But really, what that is it's more like we become attached to that idea, and we say, "This is who I am. This is it."
No.
And that's where we're getting lost.
Yeah.
Because we're not just this. We're not just that. We are all encompassing this and that.
And that. Yes, this and that, not or. Take the word or out of your language. It's this and that. And then this, but what we're trying to do here is get people to control their energy. More control of their energy. And what's energy? It's mind. So we live in a mental universe, a mind-made universe. So if I can control the mind, the body is the particle. I can control the particle. But if I don't control my mind, the particle runs my world. And I was listening to someone talk about this, and I thought it was very interesting. And they were talking about like how we can talk to ourselves. But are we really talking to ourselves? Are there two of us in there? And the truth is no. But when we talk to ourselves, it's like talking to the TV, watching your favorite football team lose, and you're yelling at it. It ain't going to change, because you're actually watching something that's recording and you have no input. So when you're talking to yourself, you're talking to your past experience recordings that keep coming up. And by doing that, you will never change that. Yelling at a tape recorder as it's recording isn't going to change the tape recording every time you press play. It's going to keep playing over and over what you've already recorded. What we're here to do is use the technology of meditation and move into the future, and not even lay over that, add on to the new recording and keep going, because there's endless tape here.
That's it.
Tape. People are like, what's tape? There's endless
data.
Data storage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything is, once I say it, it's already recorded into the universe, and it's there to test time. But what I said in the moment ago isn't going to help me into my future. I'm going to keep moving into the unknown and keep adding on to it. Not because I have to, because it feels good. I can't keep replicating the same conversation. That gets redundant. It's the Groundhog's Day effect, and we can move on beyond that, utilizing this new technology.
So Frank mentions this mind-made, sense of thought creation that we're experiencing, that this life we go through life, and we've got these mental patterns chugging along all day, and this is often what we're experiencing. So I heard somebody talking about this last week when I was watching a show. I was telling Frank about this earlier, but they brought up the fact that consistent and constant thought is an issue, because it never allows us to be in the moment and to be. We are constantly we are so associated with just the consistent repetition of thoughts that's all that we're experiencing. It's never in this moment. It's always, okay, on to the next. This will be better. It's a consistent chase. So this gentleman said, when we can think of thought as one of our senses, and he called it our sixth sense, it's got a different feel to it, because just like taste, touch, smell, hear, all those faculties that we have, we can associate them, or we can recognize them, we can even let go of them, or we can say, oh, it just tastes that way, or it just looks that way, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, when you can do that with thought now, and think of thought as a sense, It was like a mind-opening thing for me, because I was like, wow, light bulb went off. I was like, that's a great way of looking at this. We don't constantly need to be in thought. Imagine if we were walking around smelling all day, just smelling and everything. It would be overwhelming. It would get, frustrating. We'd get tired of it, etc. That's what we're doing with thought.
Yeah.
We're thinking all day and going, whoa, why am I so drained of energy, etc. It's like using one thought or one of your senses all day. And when you can look at thought as a sense, one of your faculties that you're able to utilize, you create distance from it, and you're no longer your thoughts. You're like, wow, my thought is a tool. My thought is a it's just like taste, touch, smell.
Yeah, it's a byproduct of the state we're in, actually.
Yeah.
So when I actually go in and use the technology, say meditation, it doesn't mean you have to close your eyes and sit on the couch. You go in, when we learn to use our mind properly, we choose the state, and in that state, these thoughts come up. So if I'm choosing the state that I'm coming into, those thoughts will never drag me down. Most of the time, we're in a state that we don't like. That's why the thought is banging us around. That's why the thought is taking energy away. Because if I'm in a state that I choose, like a high state of energy, and I'm getting ready to go to work, all of a sudden, every thought that comes into my mind is going to only help expand that business if it's business related. If I'm in a state of relax and vacation, every thought that comes in is only going to expand the thought of relaxation. So what state are you in? That will replicate the thoughts you're in. So if I don't want to be in that state, but I fall into it, that's exhausting. That actually uses up the technology. It burns out the cell phone, so to speak. That's why by midday you have to plug it back in. We're not using it efficiently. So we aren't the thought, just like we're not the state. We move into the state, and in that state, there's a whole slew of thoughts. But just like if I go, take it again, if I go from the state of Arizona to the state of Montana, all of a sudden, everything in Montana I experience is what I wanted to. You got the rivers, you got fly fishing, you got mountains, you got all this stuff. You got horse ranches, all these things that you would imagine being Montana. All of a sudden I go there. It doesn't matter if I see a horse running by or I'm fishing. That's a thought that's expanding my experience in Montana. But if I'm in New Jersey looking for mountains and fly fish there too, but if I'm looking for the open skies and open valleys and stuff like that, that's what's exhausting me, because I think I'm in Montana, but I'm in Jersey. I'm in a different state. Like, why aren't I seeing this? I'm like, because you're not in the state. In the state you're in, this is what you're going to see. These are the thoughts you're going to have. Now, if I understand that, recognize where I am, I'm like, okay, this is why I see this. All of a sudden, the thoughts, okay, now I go within. What state do I want to be in? I want to be in a state of relaxation. Oh, let's go to Hawaii, or let's go to the beach wherever I'm at.
And how do you get back to, or how do you get out of these states or get back to a different state? It is through repetition.
Well, it's becoming familiar with the feeling of what the choosing the state is. Yeah.
But like, I remember feeling very trapped in this and being like, I just feel this way, and I stuck with it. And it's through the consistency, and it's you begin to focus the mind where you want things to go, and you're like, no, I'll get this, and then it gets easier and easier and easier. And so just because something is very strong at first and you feel stuck, that is simply a pattern of thinking that you've been accustomed to for a very long time, and you are breaking that pattern. And through repetition of this will change and allow these new sensations, these new feelings, these new thoughts to arise.
Hey, when I first start out with a new client, and they get into this situation like I don't feel good, I'm like, okay, just give me 1 minute right now, and have them do this breathing technique. And it's not necessarily the technique. There's other modalities, other techniques that work. But I do this one particular breathing technique where I have them breathe in really deep and squeeze their lower extremities, and then have the pressure build. And then I follow the energy up to the head, and they can feel the head pressure. You're going to feel like a little pressure there. And I remind them, don't worry, you're not going to have an aneurysm. And then hold it. For a couple minutes, then breathe out. And I'm like, it feels like the water's draining out of the pool type of thing. And I do it again. I have them do it 3 times. Within a matter of 30 seconds, or a minute of me just explaining doing that, I'm like, how do you feel? Like, I feel great. I'm like, you chose to do that. So when you choose to do something, you own it. So, but like I was talking about this with you earlier, when I choose to put my foot in a shoe that fits, it's containment, but I am not locking it to it. I can choose to slip out of it. When I have the choice to enter into the state, you own your world. Most people are suggested into something or talked into something thinking they have no control. So I'm mad because this person took my parking spot. I'm like, you're choosing to be mad. The parking spot had nothing to do with it, because if you weren't assigned a parking lot, you wouldn't be mad, right? But because someone assigned it, that is mine. I'm like, anything that can be taken away from you is not yours.
Never was.
The only thing that is yours is life. And if someone takes my money from me, it wasn't mine, but they have more money. But if someone took my life from me and killed me, they don't get more life. And they didn't actually take my life. They may have shot me or stabbed me, and all I did, my life just transformed into another form or another field. Yeah. But if someone took my money, they would have more money, but a murderer doesn't have more life because they took a life. There's no such thing as taking life. I understand what people are talking about, but the life that they thought took just transformed into something else. The one thing we can't take, the thing that we own, is life. And life is what creates money. Life is what creates the world around us. Life is what creates joy. We own those things. No one could take it from us. And guess what? I willingly give my money away every day when I go to a restaurant, when I go to the gym, wherever I do. So realize everything you're willing to move your energy towards is an investment. Everything's an investment. Start looking at life as a business. What do you invest in? People are like, oh, I'm like, no. Look at everything you do as an investment. Is this going to bring you joy and excitement? Yes. But hold on. The excitement has to be generated prior to it. So when I'm excited and I go to a restaurant, I have an exciting time. But if I'm going to the restaurant, I'm like, it better be exciting. There's going to be hair in my salad. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And then I'm going to yell at people. So I set the state when I enter out into the physical world and experience it. And then all the things come out, the nuances, like, wow, I didn't see that coming. That's great. And I had a great conversation at this place. It's because now I understand I choose the state. Do I get distracted and fall out of the state? I'm like, yes. But now I have a technique to get back in there. And what I know is when I fall out of that state, that's when I'm like, Karen's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, just give me a moment. Because the next words out of my mouth, if I stay in the state, is going to piss you off. And then I'm actually going to go into, get stuck in this state.
But that's awareness.
Yeah, it is awareness, yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're shooting for. Because the more we become aware of these different states that we're in, and we have the ability to maneuver in and out of them, we are no longer trapped.
No.
And that's what Frank and I are getting at, what we're talking about. We are never trapped. We are never a slave to our emotions or to our thinking unless we are unconscious of it. If we are conscious of it, then we begin to manipulate it and change it. And so unconsciously, if you're not aware and you think, okay, the world is happening to me, yes, it's going to feel very real, and you're going to feel a lot of strong emotion and energy against you and all these types of things. But that is just simply a reflection of the inner world. A constant pointing out there and saying, it's out here that's wronging me. It's you. It's them. It's this type of person. Yeah. It's this it's political group.
It's the mirror why my head looks bad.
Yeah.
It's just a reflection.
So becoming very aware of, hey, I play a big role in this, and what Frank was just saying, that awareness, it changes everything.
Yeah. And hey, let me clarify, because I do this sometimes. I'll start saying an analogy and I don't really clarify it. So when I mentioned the shoe, so the shoe would be a finite setting onto my foot. So I willingly put my foot in the shoe so I can walk outside and I don't have to worry about stepping on a rock. But at the same time, I'm also stepping I have the ability to take the shoe off. But a lot of people feel like they're in a cage and they lock the cage. But we live in a finite and infinite universe. And what I mean is I can only experience the physical world in a finite setting. But in that finite setting, when I have a choice to move into the infinite, I then express it greater. So again, I've used this analogy before, but there's 26 letters in the alphabet. Will we ever run out of stories to tell with the English language?
Never.
No. Books, no. But it's a finite amount of numbers creating an infinite amount of books or stories. So the shoe, because I have the choice to slip into it, and it's finite because it fits my foot. I don't want to wear a shoe that's too big because I don't feel it. I'll fall out of it. But yet the shoe is a pragmatic thing in the physical world in which we're in. But then because it's not locked, it's not who I am, I can take it off. It isn't who I am. That's why I could take my shirt off. It isn't who I am. But I'm actually adding it for the experience. So that's the finite world. The infinite world is what allows me to go in to create a new shoe, one that's more comfortable and lighter, one that makes me run faster. Actually, the shoe won't make you run faster. It gives you an excuse to run faster. Mm-hmm. But you see what I'm saying. So when you marry the two together, some moment in time is like, is it the chicken and the egg? And I'm like, who cares? Who cares if you had chicken with a side of eggs or eggs with a side of chicken? You're going to eat. Is that wrong to actually have eggs and chicken on the same plate?
I don't know if I've ever had that.
It's kind of weird. Like, it's
that.
like chicken and eggs. It's like, yeah, it's like
I'll stick with bacon and eggs.
You're eating the offspring with the the producer.
That's funny.
Yeah.
No,
at least we think it's funny.
That right there is the great example of we keep trying to say that something is only this or something is only that. No. But that's why we get hung up in this world, because some things are this, some things are that.
Right,
but in
wrong.
reality, it is all this or that.
Yeah, right or wrong. It's preference and non-preference, and that comes from perspective. Because my preference when I was younger was based on my perspective. Yeah. And now as my perspective expands, so does my preference. All right? But yet, I still, like right now, I prefer to be sitting here with Mike doing this podcast than digging a ditch. Yeah. I have to dig the ditch after.
Well, one thing that I know for me is I began to really realize the difference between happiness and pleasures. I really noticed that my life growing up, I was chasing pleasures for that, dopamine, serotonin hit, whatever you want to call it.
The distracting hormones.
Yeah, and thinking that if I had consistent pleasures, that would equate to happiness. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people are caught in this rut where they think, okay, I get the car, I get the house, I get the wife, I get the kids. It's a pleasure after pleasure after pleasure after pleasure. They add up, and then all of a sudden you're happy. And what Frank and I are saying is, no. Exact opposite. You must begin in the state of happiness and then go about.
And then everything is pleasurable.
Yes, and then you will find pleasure in all things. Yeah. So we have been conditioned and taught essentially backwards our whole life how this world works. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because everything outside of us is a reflection. Yeah. And what's a reflection? Everything turned upside down. So at the end of the day, yes, this does feel very backwards, upside down. We were taught incorrectly on how to experience this reality that we call life.
And why actually what Mike talked about of having going after the pleasure sensories, why does it work for a period of time but then tapers off? And the reason is, when you actually had the first pleasure, it was because you're already in a state of joy. But then what you did is, like, you imagine you go up to a printer and you put the master paper in and you print it out. But every time you go to print another one, you use the piece that was printed. You keep doing that. After a while, the value of it will diminish because you're not using the master every time. But if I keep the master and print off of that, it will always be as great as the first one. But we don't do that. When you're chasing the pleasure to get to that state, you're literally taking the master where it started, printing it. Then you take that piece of paper, take the master out, then print that, boom. Then you remove that one and you keep doing it. So there's gonna be a tapering of the pleasure, and it no longer will work. Why? Because if I took a piece of paper, and if anyone tried this, and you keep using the copy to copy and keep switching it out, it'll become unreadable eventually.
And the same thing goes for Frank. You talk about this. Our proteins getting weaker and weaker from
Same
doing
thing.
the same thing day in, day out. People think aging is like, oh, I'm getting older because, or I'm
'Cause of
getting old
time.
because of time, linear time. And no. You're doing the same thing over and over, and your body is saying, hey, I don't need to produce a strong enough protein. I know exactly what to expect. I know exactly what's to come.
Yep.
And so it's just like copying from that master original.
That's exactly good example.
Now
Yeah.
you're boom, and you're downgrading or whatever, down regulating your genes.
But the moment
proteins.
you take the master, or the moment you go into the present moment, you actually then do something different. You head into the unknown, so to speak. All of a sudden, new neural pathways open up, neuroplasticity start to create, and all of a sudden, the mind is saying, "Oh my God, we're doing something new." So the body's like, "Okay, let's get ready," and all of a sudden, you start producing a stronger protein, which a stronger protein actually creates a stronger genetic makeup. Starts expanding or extending your telomeres, which when they break off, that's where the chromosome, the cap on the chromosome, and that's what we call aging. If you're actually doing stuff over time, you will age. But if you do this over time, you'll expand. So time is a measurement. So I could see the correlation with time and aging, but how we've been thinking, how we were taught to think, is what's creating that. So if we start to look into the future and let go of the past, I heard this not that long ago, and I thought it was brilliant. But wisdom is having no emotion to your past experience. I'm like, wow. Like, I can look at a past experience and have no attached emotion. That's wisdom. So if I'm thinking about something that harmed me, and I can think about it and it no longer harms me, now it's a tool. I can move into the future and just let go.
What's so cool, just popped into my head, but like you were talking about, how Frank gave the analogy of the shoe. And that shoe is a finite source, right? And then the infinite possibilities we have to create a new shoe.
And the more you walk around, the quicker it wears out.
Right. Well, this human body that we have, what Frank and I are talking about, we're not saying, okay, you understand this process and then you are going to live forever. Not at all. We understand that this body is going to die. This body is going to die.
It's going to transform, but we're getting.
We are that finite. That's what we're saying. This is the finite, and the infinite is within us. And so when you use the infinite within us, it manifests or creates and is experienced in a finite, observed fashion. So to think that this body, 6 foot, whatever, this size shoe, blah, 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 is going to live forever, that's ridiculous. No, I'm going to shed this body. But I tell you right now, I know I'm eternal.
Yeah, but no, what's amazing, though, is we're actually seeing this already. So when we come to more understand these technologies and understanding, the body lives longer. Just like when you had a shoe from years ago compared to now, the shoe can last long. In some cases they want you to rebuy the shoe so it doesn't last that long. But so now you had science looking at a certain period of time. Say you go back, to 1700s before that, and the average person lived to what, I'm throwing numbers out there, into 50. Well, now the average person is living to about 90, a little more. Now they actually say with this new understanding of technology, the average person could start living to 140. Now, I mentioned to somebody the other day, and I don't want to live to 140. I'm like, listen, if you were to live to 140, you wouldn't have the mindset that it's treacherous. And the example I use is when it's different if you're the child or the parent. And what I'm going to say is when you're at Disneyland, the parent wants to end this quickly. The child doesn't want it to end. So become the childlike state. In other words, if you live to 140, you're not going to be in the same dredge job. If you are, you're not going to make it to 90, for the love of God. So you have to look beyond the thing. What happens is, what does 140 do opposed to 90? It just gives me more experiences. Just like the 90-year-old didn't wish they died at 50, that's 40 more years of experience than someone had in the 1700s.
And when Frank says, look beyond, he's not saying, try to think a pattern and it has to fit this pattern you think about. That's getting lost in a thought. That's a conditioning of our Western culture.
You have to work till I'm 100 years old.
Well, yeah, we think, okay, all right, then I got to figure out what I'm going to do till I'm 140.
Yeah, right.
And then we start thinking, and you're getting lost in the finite. Well, you're not in the moment. You're not being.
What we're starting to also understand with the technology of moving into the field is the understanding of effort and the monetary return from it is actually becoming easier. It really is. So years ago, people had to do major physical labor and then collect hours and get paid hourly than people do now. And what I mean is, like, how much labor and activity is, say, like, and I'm going to use an example, like Elon Musk is doing to amass like $280 billion. Well, he doesn't have any more time on the planet than you and I do. He's just found efficiency in the direction in which he's working in at a greater field. All right? Now, it's a greater field. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just greater. So just like the oak can climb to create the canopy of the forest, the bush doesn't need to. The bushes come up to here, but one isn't better than the other, but the oak is greater in height. We are saying that. So greater is just a mathematical term. There should be no attachment. You can, but I don't put attachment to greater or less than in a negative or positive way. It just is, because, 5 is greater than 3. Now, if I owed $5 million, $3 million would be better.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd rather have $3 million than 5.
But yet, there's no disputing that 5 is greater than 3.
Mm-hmm.
3 is less than 5.
But how are you looking at it? What's your
if I said
perspective?
5 is better than 3, and then I changed the narrative of the story, I just fooled myself. Like, 5 is better than 3. Well, what happens if you owed $5 million? Oh, in that case, it's not. But when I say greater, that will never change. So we're actually here to expand greater, not become better or worse. That's a myth. This is what we bought into. Yeah. Wherever you are right now, you're not worse off. You just want to expand it to greater. And when we do that, we become more efficient. So if you're walking in a circle 10 miles a day, I'm like, you want to become efficient, walk linear in the understanding, and you'll get further. And what is further? You just have more experiences in the 10 miles. But nonetheless, you did 10 miles in a day. I had 24 hours in a day, just like Elon Musk does. All right? Now, I'm not going to amass the same amount of money as, but I'm going to still have 24 hours of experience. And the experience is based on mine. His is based on his. He may have a greater value in the economic turnaround, but it isn't better. And I believe he himself would say the same thing.
Absolutely.
But his creation of the monetary value of being greater has to, because he's trying to get to Mars. I'm just trying to get to the candy store. Yeah, Snickers bar.
I'm just trying to get to Hawaii.
I just want a Snickers bar,
I'm just trying to get to the convenience store and relax.
Get to the vending machine.
But that's it, and it's funny because like what you were just talking about, we judge our everyday experiences on, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too
Based
this,
on
I'm
what?
too that. Exactly.
Based on what?
And this is where we're all getting caught up, and we think, I've gone too far. I've wrecked my body. I can assure you, you have not wrecked your body. This body is replenishing daily. Our skin is growing, our fingernails are growing, our hair is growing, all of this.
Yeah, there are a case out there, and like, don't take my word for it, but just go look out there. There was a woman who wrote the book Dying to Be Me, and for the life of me, I can't remember her name, but she literally had died with cancer riddled throughout her body. The last memory she has, like, was someone, the doctor says you have 3 days to live. Next thing you know, she was hovering above her body in the hospital room, watching her husband and mother cry over her. And for an instant, she was like, why are you guys crying? But then she realized she was no longer in the body. Her consciousness is outside of it. Now, I've never had this experience, so I'm taking her word for it. But what happened is a voice came to her and said, do you want to come or do you want to stay? And she said, I'll only stay if I'm cancer-free. Next thing you know, she woke up in the body in the hospital, and over time, the cancer started diminishing. We can't explain how that happened, but if a woman was literally dead from cancer, took over her life energy and reverted back, and now writes books and doing talk on it, I'm like, if you're overweight, that is nothing compared to having cancer and dying.
It's simply
and
how
you
we
can turn it
magnify it.
around. How, the thing is, we don't know, but what we do know is when we get out of a state, we go into the field, the body, the organism knows what to do. When you get off the soil, the intelligence will allow the seed to grow. But if I'm standing above the seed, physics isn't going to allow it to grow. Once I get to it and attend it and just leave it alone, our body's already intelligent. We don't need to teach our body. We need to get the mind out of it by creating the state in which we want to be in. And when I'm in a great state, the body's like, dude, you're going to do this thing. I got to amplify this body. I got to build this body up in order to do that. You want to hike Mount Everest? We got to do this. If you know it's possible, you get out of the way and you start to imagine yourself hiking Mount Everest and taking hikes on this mountain. This body, this organism starts to build up. But the second I'm like, I want to hike Mount Everest, but I don't think my body can do it. Well, the body's like, well, let's sit on the couch and watch TV.
Yeah.
Here's a carrot. Here's a Snickers bar.
Yeah. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
It's a constant putting ourselves inside this finite box and going, all right, I'm comfortable.
Now, again, I'm not saying, like, if you've never hiked before and then the first thought is I want to hike Mount Everest, you then have to go for the first stride. You might want to, like, walk to the mailbox and back. And then find a hill near your house and do that. Find another mountain you could do. Mount Everest is out there, but if you constantly think about it, you're never going to get off the couch. It's too big of a feat from where you are. But when we get really good at this, there is no such thing as too big of a feat. But we have to start reassembling how we think. When we go into the field, everything is possible. And then when I put my attention to it, it creates a molecular physical electron, which then becomes the particle. And oh my God, now I see how this works. Where do I want to go from here? And that's the exciting thing. But it is one step at a time.
I don't know
it's
why.
Becoming familiar with it. That's what meditation is. Becoming familiar with the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think it's very important to realize that when we are measuring something, we are defining it. And so as we're focused on this or as we're more aware of this, the less we are going to judge others, the less we are going to judge ourselves, the less we are going to measure others, the less we're going to measure ourselves.
It wouldn't occur to do so.
And it's just, it's very, or when you begin to look at it like this and focus in a different way, opportunities open up, things change, and the world softens up. Right now, we think that this is such a real world all around us, and it's not. What we're experiencing,
the feeling of it is the reality.
Yeah, and when you tap into this, you can see how many other dimensions, whatever you want to call it, are out there, and we are so far beyond just touch, taste, smell, hear, thought.
But it's fun to do that. It really is fun to do it. But once we don't let this control the touch, the taste, give us the input, but we're putting the input, the taste and touch is amazing.
Yeah.
Once I go into the field and create the state, no thing creates the state. Nothing creates something. But how I feel, the feeling, the state will create everything. This desk cannot create another desk. But I can go in and create another desk based off my premise of doing it. And the technology, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
But how they made this desk opposed to back in 1700s was different. Technology allowed the desk to come out quicker, more efficient. But we don't do things to get somewhere quicker. We're naturally efficient. And efficiency just means we're burning up less energy. And people are like, well, what's the premise? I'm like, if you look at the premise as the bottom line, it seems ridiculous. But I don't look at the bottom line. But if I could stay focused in energy and I could, instead of working 8 hours at what I love, I could work 15 hours. It's not to make more money, although more money is a natural byproduct of that.
It will follow.
Yeah. It's if I could focus for 15 hours opposed to 8, that feels so much better. So we have to do something, right? Say the average person sleeps 8 hours a day. Well, what do you do for the rest of the time? Half that you go to work 8 hours, 8-hour days, a typical 8 hour. Well, I don't know if it is now. And then you have another 8 hours. What do you do with that 8 hours? I don't know what other people do, but I know this. When I started, I'm like, okay, I want to get to 3 or 4 hours of meditation prior to going to this trip. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's like, what did you have to stop doing? I'm like, nothing. I still read my books at night. Instead of watching 2 episodes of something, I watch one. but I'd rather be doing the other thing. Doesn't matter. I didn't add 2 more hours onto my day. I didn't have
I got a
26
26-hour day now.
26-hour day. That would be funny.
Oh man, if people had the option
why are
to
you
do
late?
that,
I'm like, I'm not late. You're early.
there would be people at like 49-hour days. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they are associating their value, their worth as, oh, you know, I'm such a good worker. I'm such a good and whatever you attach to, whatever you associate with, you're using it to like puff yourself up and say, I am this. I work 70 hours a week, 6 days a week. And think about how many people like pride themselves off of saying this as if it means something.
I used to do that. And I tell you what, when I would actually voice it out, it was out of like, I was tired. So I'm like, you realize how many hours I worked this week? And all of a sudden now I'm snapping at somebody. But yet everyone had the same amount of hours as you. They might end up in focus on the same thing. But I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the bottom line, and that's what was exhausting me. But now people are like, how many hours? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I just show up and I leave. I know when to leave. I don't even think. And I get caught in these moments with doing things. I go from one thing to the next. And next thing I'm like, oh, all right, it's this time. I'm not oblivious to time. So Karen's like, well, hey, we said we're going to have dinner at 5:30. I'm like, oh, I don't go by time anymore.
Yeah, that wouldn't work out.
Yeah, that would be an idiot. I'm not doing that. Like, but my efficiency of time and value. So I'm setting a point when I want to be somewhere. That's respect to the field of business I'm doing. So you don't do away with that. I'm just more efficient, so I get a lot more done. And the time I show up to dinner, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Just give me a moment. Now I'm like, hey, how's it going? And then what'd you do to him? Like, oh, you did a lot. I'm like, yeah, but it was poetic the way it happened.
Well, one thing I want to bring up, so just hearing Frank say that about like time, et cetera, stuff like this is why people kind of sometimes don't like the new age stuff or the woo-woo stuff. It's like people will say, time is just an illusion, and Frank and I will tell you that we know this to our core. Time is a man-made concept. It doesn't mean anything. It's very much a created idea. But Frank and I also know that this time exists.
It's experience.
It is something that we can describe here in this human, third-dimensional field, if you will. So when we talk about these things...
Time's an illusion, right?
Yeah.
Someone said it, but
time is an illusion.
persistent.
And we know this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's my favorite. Albert Einstein, he goes... Time is an illusion, but a persistent one at that. Yeah.
And
I love that.
But so is a video game.
Yeah.
So is a video game to a child, but the experience within the field of it is why they're doing it.
Well, it's so funny. We're trying to create this metaverse right now, right? In this like 3D thing. We are living in a metaverse.
We already are. Yeah. It's just a replication of it.
So to have people like try to go in and wear these goggles and do what we can do right now all around us, it's quite funny. But it's just a different way of looking at it. They think I'm not in control. I know I am in control. When I look at myself, I don't see this character of stories that I used to in the past, that I used to carry with me. This is who I am. This is how I was raised. I'm this religion. I'm this race. I'm this weight. I'm this. Yeah. I belong to these clubs. All of that is measuring and weighing, and it is defining me and making me into something I am not.
Yeah, and hey, for parents out there, you have the kids with the video games and the VR headsets, whatever. If you can actually explain to them that they're in control when they're playing a video game, they have the capacity to be in control when they're in the real world. Absolutely. This is why kids play video games. They don't. If you actually correlate that, so the video game can actually be a really good platform to actually understand this information. The video game isn't the problem. It's how you perceive it. All right? Because, when I was a kid, we didn't really have a lot of video games. And like, oh, we were out playing. I'm like, do you know how much mischief I got into? Like, I was on the threshold of going to prison half the time because there was no one, throwing rocks at cars because we were bored. I'm like,
like literally, I know what you mean.
But now the kids say could go into this world. They can choose. They put VR. They're choosing the visualization, what they want to do. They're not like choosing like a dirty house or something. They're choosing it. Now they know it's possible. Now, if you can tell them, hey, that's just a fractal of who you are. You don't need that to create that, but this can show you how it's created. Oh, I never looked at it that way. Yeah. Now you're teaching them to put the horse in front of the cart. You're actually doing it. It's just a mere fractal of what we already are. So technology can make us and wake us up. It could also, if you hold on to it, can have the equal and opposite effect. So I look at technology, I'm like, this is showing us how powerful we are. But we're actually starting to understand each other, because when virtual reality came out, I'm like, what we already are in virtual reality. Now I can prove to someone, or actually I can actually explain to them, because there is a virtual reality headset. Before that, can you imagine, like in the 1700s, we're actually in a virtual reality. Some guy sticks a sword at me. He's like, how's that virtual for you, buddy? You know?
Yep.
Because they talk like that back in the day. Off here, thou, stab me into the heart, and it's virtual.
But that's that's a great example.
Yeah.
You know, it is.
Yeah, so don't judge anything, to see how you can use it into the facet and move it in direction and make it viable for you. Use that technology.
You are that technology.
You are the technology. So start using it. Again, use the technology of meditation just for the experience. And when you close your eyes, even if it's for a moment, if you feel better than you did when your eyes are open, you did that. You're in control. Now, when you open your eyes, you don't feel good. You did that. You're in control. You just have to follow it. And one day you close your eyes and meditating, one day you won't have to. You'll just get so used to feeling good, nothing will take you from it. And that's where meditation comes in. Becoming familiar with feeling good, and you wouldn't choose it. All right?
Anything you can measure, you are not.
Yeah. But keep expanding that measurement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us this week. We'll see you next week for another episode of Perspective Shift.
Yeah.
If you like what you heard, go ahead and subscribe below. Leave us a message. You can comment below. You can send us an email. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, let us know if there's any topics you want us to talk about on pertaining to this field of technology.
We'd love to jump into it.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
All right.